Welcome to the Love of the Star podcast. I'm Bobby Bell, Dallas Cowboys insider for 105 through the Fan in Dallas, joined as always by former Super Bowl winning NFL scout Brian Broaddus. He is now the co-host of the G-Bag Nation 2 to 7 p.m. Central, Monday through Friday on 105 through the Fan in Dallas. You can also catch him as the pre- and post-game co-host on the Dallas Cowboys radio network. And Brian, one more preseason game. That's all we have. And I do got to say, I think this is the first, maybe it's the second podcast we've done here where Brian and I have matching mics. So I know some of you on the YouTube have been upset. We read your comments, all of them. I saw some of you were upset with the levels. So I said, all right, I'm going to get a mic just like Brian's. So here we are. We got a mic here. We crowdsourced this, and we're listening to you guys. So you guys have been heard in the YouTube. So keep dropping comments in there because we love hearing from you guys. But we've got the same mic now, so we should have the same level. We should be all good. Brian, how are you doing today, and how excited are you for this final preseason game? This was the Scouts game back in the day, right?
Back in the day, they called this the Scouts game, and what makes it even more unique is the fact that we only have one cut. And so, the one roster reduction, and it used to be a time where there was when you had the reduction before the final game, and then it turned into, okay, well, how are you going to have enough players to be able to play the game, but also not expose your starters to the game. And so by allowing all the teams to keep all their players and that have the one cut, we'll probably get to see something very similar for the Cowboys that we've seen for the last couple of games. And you know what? I'm okay with that. I think there's some questions still at wide receiver. With the numbers there. I think there's some questions now with what's gone on with the Overshown injury. I think there's some questions at defensive tackle with guys like Quentin Bohanna. Will they keep 3 defensive tackles? Will they just keep 2? There are still plenty of things that you're going to have to work through. The running back situation's another one, Bobby, that, have they made up their mind about the number of running backs they're going to keep? Is it trying to put Malik Davis on waivers and see if you can get him back and put him on the practice squad? Are there top possibilities of trading for an offensive tackle or a guard and then claiming other positions like a linebacker? I think when we get to the final reduction, matter of fact, I think there's going to be some roster manipulation of guys that they're probably going to go without a long snapper. They might go without C.J. Goodwin, again, the vested veteran thing, but he's got guaranteed money now, so it might be a little bit more difficult to play that card. Yep. But we'll see. Nashawn Wright might be a guy. Now, remember this, if you're a guy that's hurt, they might have to keep you on the active roster for the one day, and then they could put you on injured reserve, and then they can bring you back at that time, that 4-week period or 3-week period that they have. So a lot of things about to happen, but you're going to play a football game, and it's going to be one final shot to see if the decisions that you're making, I'm sure that Will McClay and Stephen Jones, Jerry Jones, Mike McCarthy have an idea when they look at their personnel board. They've got a lot of those tags tilted right now, and then there's some guys that they have absolute questions about. So this is exciting for me, just because I'd like to see which way these questions get answered.
Yeah, and look, we've got several questions that need answering outside of just the roster. Questions about Sam Williams that we'll get into here shortly. Some questions, like you mentioned, about covering for DeMarvion Overshown and some of their plans with that, which Stephen Jones did give us a little bit of insight into how they plan on attacking that. Before we get into those questions, I'm just curious to run through the last we left. You had not gotten a chance to really dive into the tape yet. I know you've gotten a chance to see the tape now. Any big takeaways for you coming out of that second preseason game? Anything that really stuck out to you as, oh, this is a good sign or this is a bad one or anything like that?
Yeah, I think that those young offensive linemen are continuing to try and find footing to solidify spots, maybe 7, 8, 9 for the roster. I really do like what I've seen from TJ Bass as a guard possible option there. I think that Josh Ball probably played his best game as a Dallas Cowboy. And again, it's not a lot of regular season action. It's more of just the with the preseason variety. But I thought he acquitted himself very well. Awesome Richards continues to show the ability to play both tackle and guard. It's not always perfect for him. I think Quinton Bohanna, I mentioned him early for some of the opportunities that he was able to show. We're kind of figuring out things about Kelvin Joseph playing in the secondary. Marquise Bell, is he going to be a guy that, Marquise Bell, every time you look at the final stats when we do our post-game show, Bobby, he's one of the guys that's one of the top guys when it comes to tackling, top tacklers on the team. I think that Tolbert solidified his spot as the 4. I think he could push for 3, given that we'll see what happens with, and this is not against anything of Michael Gallup. I think Michael Gallup has done just fine in the opportunities he's got. I think that Jalen Tolbert has the bit between his teeth right now, to steal a horse racing term. He sees an opportunity here. He's on the other side of the hill now with his confidence, and he's showing that he can make plays. So yeah, it's I think the quarterback situation, if you felt like that maybe Will Grier was getting an opportunity to close the ground on Cooper Rush, I don't think that's the case at all. So Cooper Rush is clearly your backup, and maybe that's the way it should be after he was 4-1 last year. But you kind of thought that maybe Will Grier would compete. I thought we'll see if Will Grier, in fact, is one of those guys that gets on the 53-man roster, that kind of thing. Maybe we'll see if they're going to carry the 3 quarterbacks or not. Those are the kinds of things that you noticed in this game, when we sat down and watched the All-22.
Stephen Jones tells us this week, tells the media that Jalen Tolbert has, like you mentioned, taken that number 4 role. That is his now. Now the question, like you mentioned, maybe he cuts into a little bit of the Michael Gallup workload. Maybe he competes with him a little bit. Or maybe it's just something to give you some confidence in the receiving core after Brandon Cooks is done here, whenever that may be. But either way, given the number 4 role, that's locked in. Sounds like he could be on ice this weekend because of that against the Raiders. But when you look at John Stevens, who we talked about last week and said, hey, maybe he would have been kind of a fringe guy. Stephen Jones outright told us that was a guy who had played his way onto the 53 pretty much, which is kind of a surprising comment to me. I thought that maybe he would have been in contention, but that sounded like they firmly liked him on the 53-man roster. Does that spell trouble, you think, for Sean McEwen or Peyton Hendershot? I mean, neither one is in trouble at this point due to the ACL injury and Stevens being out, but that means that one of them was in all likelihood on the chopping block here.
Well, could it have also been whoever the 6th receiver was?
Brooks?
What if it was Jalen Brooks? What if it was, you play with 5 wide receivers and, you have that, it gives you the flexibility to potentially have the extra tight end. McEwen has made some plays. He's also had some times where he hasn't been as good. I think overall this group has blocked pretty well. I think there has been improvement with Ferguson. I think there's been improvement with Hendershot and with McEwen. Stevens was a guy that I know talking to people really outside the organization, which these are like the guys and the gals that we work with, the Todd Archers and stuff like that, who have a very good handle on this roster. Even Brad Sham. There felt like that maybe that John Stevens was more of a practice squad kind of guy. That he was, I'm not calling it fool's gold, but he'd had good practices. He'd had good games. But okay, where was that roster spot going to come from? How much did you really like McEwen, as we mentioned? How much do you really like the 6th wide receiver? If you're going to keep 6, would John Stevens have been the 6th wide receiver in number? Not in position, but
sure.
Where would you have stolen that roster spot in order? Now, maybe it's the 3rd quarterback thing again. Maybe you have to kind of figure some things out that way. But It's interesting because I was kind of torn with him. I was thinking like, man, okay, yeah, this guy, he's doing everything he can to make this team, but was it going to be enough to take somebody out? Yeah, maybe it was. Maybe it absolutely was, and Stephen Jones, in fact, is telling you the truth.
So let's talk about Marquise Bell now, a guy who I know you had mentioned about him kind of loading up the stat sheet recently. Marquise Bell, a guy who, even though he came out of Florida A&M and he was a community college transfer, a lot of people may not realize he was at Maryland. He was a Big Ten recruit, and this was a guy who got into some trouble off the field, was suspended ahead of his freshman season, transferred. But this is somebody that was viewed as a big-time, a player capable of playing big-time college football for Maryland. And so he ends up going to Florida A&M, has sort of the J-Ron Curse body type. Like, I think we've viewed it the last couple of years as this is their future replacement for J-Ron Curse. But what's been intimated by Marquise Bell and Stephen Jones this week is that Bell is going to be the guy that they're going to try and duplicate some of the packages that they wanted to do with DeMarvion and Overshown. Obviously, I think Overshown is somebody who's got a better blitzing ability, somebody who can function almost with edge-like traits at times. But I find it interesting that they're going to go with Bell here, because I felt like some of the stuff they wanted to do with Overshown, you're not going to be able to replicate it with other people on the roster. That was what was so unique about Overshown's skill set and his size and his ability. But Bell is probably the closest one you can replicate in terms of size. And, all right, he can cover a little. He can fill the run game. The pass rush is not quite the same. And I don't think the football IQ, no slight to Marquise Bell, it's just DeMarvion Overshown is such a high football IQ. I think you're going to have a hard time finding that with any young player. But your thoughts on Bell potentially stepping in and taking some of these Overshown-like reps?
Yeah, I've in my mind, I've kind of gone round and round because I was a little disappointed, and I'm sure the coaching staff was disappointed too because of what happened with Overshown. And I wonder if there's certain packages or certain ideas that they had for him in mind that they now have to completely scrap, that they're going to have to say, we don't have the player with the capability. You mentioned Bell. Overshown's a 230-pound guy. Bell's a 218-pound guy. Both have a nose for the football. Both have the ability to finish. Bell is a guy that probably a little bit lacks in coverage from what you got in Overshown. But when you're talking about being around the football, when you're talking about finishing plays, Bell is right there with Overshown. And what's so sad about the Overshown thing is, he was selected there in the third round. If Overshown plays, they do a redraft, and I guarantee you it's going to be one of these guys that, well, maybe he should have been selected, in the second round, higher in the second round. Maybe he was a bottom one guy that should have been, a late one, kind of a thing. I think that his play was going to be one of those times when you do radio like you and I do for a living, that we were going to talk about who in the league outplayed their draft status. And Overshown probably was going to be one of those guys. Yeah. And that's the unfortunate thing. I think that that Bell is capable of, just because of the traits I told you, the finish, the finding the ball, all those things are really, really positive for him. And maybe, again, Dan Quinn, the one thing I could trust about these defensive coaches is they will take players, they will find their strengths, and then they'll use them in that way. We haven't always been able to say that about players here with the Dallas Cowboys through history. There's been times where whether it's Rod Marinelli or Mike Nolan, we felt like, wow, this player was drafted, and now we're trying to kind of figure out what he is. These guys, if they don't figure out, okay, he's this, but not this, they will play to a player's strength. That's the one thing I really appreciate about Dan Quinn and this defensive staff. They will find the right guys to play in their scheme.
You are listening to the Love of the Star podcast. The Love of the Star is an Audacy podcast. You can find it on the Audacy app or wherever you get your podcasts. So, Brian, you mentioned there that they will always find the right guys to play within their scheme. One of the criticisms that has been leveled against the Dallas Cowboys in recent history is have they always found the right guys in terms of off the field, in terms of football character, particularly in that second round where they love to pick the Blue Star Special, the medically flagged or character flagged player that kind of slipped to them a little bit in the second round. Sometimes those have worked out great. Sean Lee is an example of that. Even a guy like Bruce Carter did some good things for you here in Dallas as a flag player. The last character flag that maybe slipped to you a little, where there were questions, maybe DeMarcus Lawrence, a guy who had slipped a little bit for some questions coming out of Boise State that he's answered correctly. But otherwise, you've had some bad luck with this, and it was on display again.
What about Kelvin Joseph?
Oh, Kelvin Joseph is the most recent example
of it. The most recent one, if you want to think about guys that had the most question marks about their off-the-field stuff.
Yeah, well, and that's the thing is that you got to remember, think of some of the guys that they've dealt with in recent years or had questions about. Dak Prescott had the drunk driving incident ahead of the draft. That was something that some people wondered if it pushed him to the back end of the fourth. You had the Kelvin Joseph pick. A lot of questions about Kelvin Joseph. Lyle Collins. They had to do a lot of investigation on Lyle Collins when there were questions about was he potentially involved in a potential murder, which he was not. It was something that he was cleared of. But these sorts of questions that have existed about players, with all of those questions that have existed, Brian, I know that with Sam Williams, as somebody put it to me with the team, they said that over the last decade, any player that's been on the Cowboys board, they haven't spent more time or resources on investigating a player's background than Sam Williams. And Sam Williams, the second-round pick out of Ole Miss last year, who had a really strong rookie season, I think, especially for a pass rusher where the learning curve can be a little steep sometimes. He was a good player for you last year, and he's looked good out here during these practices and during these preseason games. He, on Sunday, gets arrested on their return to Frisco. The charge was unlawful possession of a gun, and he also had possession of a controlled substance, which is rumored or reported. I'm not sure which one yet. I think it has been officially reported that he had concentrated THC. So it wasn't exactly marijuana. It was probably THC in a vape pen, but
is the pen's the biggest problem, right?
The pen is a problem because that's a controlled substance.
Problem. Yeah,
that's a controlled substance. That is a state. That is a I believe the term for it is state jail felony. And so that's a felony, and the possession of the gun then, when coupled with that, makes the possession of the firearm unlawful. So
I think the gun's the least of his problems.
Well, and I mean, he was
in the state of Texas, that is.
Well, yeah, until you couple it with the vape, that's when you've got the problem. But these couple of issues here for Sam Williams, and this is something that we talked about with the fight. You remember I said last week when we talked about the Sam Williams fight, I said that I think the thing that's probably teams recognize scraps happen, these fights happen. They don't always love them, but they occur. That's one of the guys they don't want, unable to settle down. Like they don't want to see him out there just go and take off the pads. Let's go. Once the fight's kind of dispersed, that's the last guy who needs to be doing it. And it's for reasons like this. They had a ton of questions about him coming out. And this is just a continuation, I think, of maturation questions. And frankly, just come on, be smarter, dude. I think that's the way the Cowboys feel about it. Jerry Jones seemed a little flippant about it, talking to reporters yesterday. In fact, last year, Sam Williams went 98 miles per hour. In this stop, he was pulled over going 66. And so Jerry's comment on it was, well, that's improvement. We're 32 miles per hour slower. So I guess by next year, Sam Williams will be driving 34 miles per hour. But Brian, your just overall thoughts on what it's like being in a front office, dealing with things like this as they come in and just going man, what a knucklehead. And two, how the Cowboys approach this. Is this something that when you're in an NFL front office, do you just kind of go you idiot, you got caught? Or is it a signal for a larger concern usually?
Well, you never want your players to be arrested. That's one thing. The fact that you talked about all the legwork that they did on Sam while he was in Oxford, Mississippi, shows you how much they value the player. And there's a lot of things you will put up with when the player's really, really good. But there also comes a responsibility where you have to be very mindful of where you're at. Remember very early Ezekiel Elliott. We were all kind of in that mode where, well, man, he ain't going to last this contract. You know, he's something.
There were both publicly and privately. Ezekiel Elliott. For those of you that don't know, Ezekiel Elliott was a pain in the ass for this football team the first 3 years he was here.
There's no question, and there was like, this guy is going to off the field himself off this team is what's going to happen, and things turned around for Ezekiel Elliott. He figured out that, like, okay, if I'm gonna I understand the spotlight. He went to a big-time school at Ohio State, and there's a lot of things they got away with there during their Urban Meyer administration, that we're learning about.
Had to grow up a little.
He had to grow up a little, and I think the Cowboys are probably thinking the same thing about Sam Williams right now, that there's going to be times where, like, Sam, listen, we can't have this happen every year. We can't have you, A, driving a high rate of speed, B, carrying a gun, and C, carrying, drugs, and that's where I think that, or drug paraphernalia, whatever you want to call it. But there comes a time where you do have to grow up, or they're going to have to move on, or the law will take it into their hands, or the NFL. See, you never want to put your future in the hands of the NFL. You just don't. You just don't. Anything that goes up there to New York and goes through that office, potentially, look what they did to, these guys with the gambling stuff. Years suspension. Calvin Ridley, years suspension. You just do not want to put your future in the hands of the NFL, because they will find a way to come down on you in a way that hurts your pocketbook, and hurts your reputation for, future things. And so I hope that Sam grows up. You're right. There was no player last year that did. It was very reminiscent of what we used to see with David Irving. And remember how David Irving would play like minimal snaps and come up with 3 tackles for loss, or cause a fumble, or get a sack. It was amazing, that type of ability that he had in order to make plays, but do it in a minimum amount of reps.
Yeah. And
Sam Williams, you're hopeful, with what's going on. I mean, there's whispers, and I'm saying this is only whispers, would the Cowboys move on from Dorrance Armstrong? But with what they have with Fowler and others, would they move on? Would they try and move on from Dorrance Armstrong? And would Dorrance Armstrong welcome a trade? With Dorrance Armstrong, who probably thinks, hey, I'm not getting paid enough here. Maybe I need to go somewhere else. And, so now Dorrance Armstrong is really back in play, because maybe you can't trust Sam Williams completely to do the job. But there are whispers about moving on from Dorrance Armstrong. Again, guys and gals, only whispers, things that you hear, nothing, coming from the Dallas Cowboys as far as, oh yeah, we're trying to, put Dorrance Armstrong out there. They're just people in league circles that are kind of feeling that maybe Dorrance Armstrong is a guy you could go trade for. So we'll see if but they might have to circle back, the Cowboys, if the Sam Williams thing, doesn't get better.
Other news coming out of the Star this week, Jimmy Johnson is going to wait his turn once again for the Ring of Honor. Just before we get into the mailbag here, DeMarcus Ware, who was enshrined in the Pro Football Hall of Fame just recently, is going up in the Ring of Honor. Just DeMarcus Ware. When Jerry was asked about that on Wednesday, he did some gymnastics to try and tell you why Jimmy's still not in there, and even tried to say, well, look, I might put Micah Parsons in there soon. You don't know what I might do. Okay, guys. And so that's where we're at that. But DeMarcus Ware, totally deserving going up there. Are you at all surprised that Jerry didn't put his triplets up there, that it wasn't a DeMarcus Ware, Tony Romo, Jason Witten collective going in? Or do you think he just viewed it as, look, that's defensive side of the ball. Maybe I'll put Witten and Romo in together, maybe, if I so choose to do that. But DeMarcus Ware is a standalone player. That's the guy I want to put in here.
I kind of feel like, though, that to me, with this Ring of Honor thing, I think it honestly needs to be an individual thing. I think it's such a great honor to. The thing that's kind of disappointing is that DeMarcus Ware, for as great a player as he is, now his entering the Ring of Honor comes at questions with Jimmy Johnson involved. You know what I'm saying? I mean, and, now it's like, instead of like celebrating DeMarcus Ware like it needs to be celebrated, it turns into immediately, well, why aren't you putting Jimmy Johnson in? And now DeMarcus is, yes, but I personally feel like the Cowboys need to do it on individual basis. I don't feel like putting multiple guys in because it's such an exclusive group. It's such an exclusive group, and I wouldn't want to be everybody else up there. I peers. I mean, I'm trying to think if there's been any multiple guys that have gone in. I think Gil Brandt had his own. I think Darren Woodson had his own.
Darren did have his own.
Jared, Drew Pearson, I think, had his own.
Triplets went in together, of course.
See, that to me is kind of, you're going in the Ring of Honor. It's a great deal. I mean, me, I have my issues with Charles Haley because I'm a big fan of what Harvey Martin did with this organization, before 1989 when the Jones family purchased the team. And that's another fight for another day. But I think the thing, I'm just saying this, and I said it on the radio yesterday on 105.3 The Fan on the G-Bag Nation. I don't think this bothers Jimmy Johnson. I don't. I think the most important thing for Jimmy Johnson was he got into the Hall of Fame. And he had a very, let's be honest, he had a very limited NFL coaching career. Very limited. Almost like John Madden.
Yeah, very similar. Very similar. Now, I
very
just
similar with John Madden. But
I do want to add one note really quickly before you finish your point. I think what mattered to Jimmy, he already got, which was not just the Hall of Fame, but the fact that last year, 2 years ago, whenever it was that he went in the Hall of Fame, that he got a chance to stand in front of the fan base at halftime. Like I think it was big. I think that was big to him. Just Ring of Honor's nice, but I think the fact that he got a chance to step back into the stadium and talk to Cowboys fans as a member of the Cowboys being honored, I think that's all he wanted. He got a chance to scream, "How about them Cowboys?" to 90,000 fans at AT&T Stadium. That was what he wanted, and he got that.
No, absolutely. And one of the biggest ovations you've ever heard in that stadium was for him. But the fact that he is recognized by the nation, the world, players, coach, whatever, he is a Hall of Fame member. And being in the Ring of Honor, it almost seems a little petty right now, But Charles Haley had to get in a Ring of Honor to make the Hall of Fame. Charles Haley owes everything to Jerry Jones for doing what he did for him. But Charles Haley is a San Francisco 49er. He had Eddie DeBartolo present him in Canton, where Jerry Jones did everything to try and resuscitate Charles Haley's image, which was not great.
No.
He is a great player. He is a San Francisco 49ers. He played for you, It's like a Deion Sanders. He is a great player. He played for you. But if you look at the Ring of Honor, it really is the homegrown player. Charles Haley, I believe, is the only one that was a player that wasn't drafted or signed by the Cowboys. Am I right about that?
I think so.
I don't believe there's anybody else in that Ring of Honor that wasn't either drafted. I know Drew Pearson was a free agent in that. I don't remember with Don Perkins and others. That's pre-Jerry.
Undrafted free agent, but he was still homegrown. Yeah,
homegrown.
Drew
That's
Pearson
what I'm saying. I mean, his career was with the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah,
and Charles Haley was the very first one to ever be in the Ring of Honor that was drafted by some other team. I think I'm right about that. But anyway,
think you are.
So to me, that's the things that my fight is, again, the Charles Haleys and fans. Guys, gals, I know what Charles Haley did for this organization. I absolutely respect that. And I respect what Jerry Jones did to get him in the Hall of Fame. But, for the fights that are about Jimmy Johnson and the fights that are about Harvey Martin, man, those are battles that shouldn't be fights. Those are guys that should be in your Ring of Honor, which is a very exclusive. Hell, Bobby, we go to some of these stadiums, Buffalo and Denver and places like that. They got guys up on the wall. You're like going, oh, okay, this is an okay player. Oh, okay, and they might have 30 guys up on that wall. That's what makes this Cowboy one so unique, and the fact that Jimmy Johnson and Charles and Harvey Martin are in the Ring of Honor. I'm as a Cowboy fan for so many years, kind of disappointed in that.
One note here for you before we go to the mailbag. It's on a very small technicality. Okay, the Baltimore Colts drafted Don Perkins. But in November of 1959, Don Perkins signed a personal services contract with Dallas. And this meant he would play for the Cowboys if and when they received an NFL franchise. So the fact that the Colts drafted him, the Cowboys then got their franchise, and so he essentially reverted.
But he never played for Baltimore, right?
Never played for him. He was drafted by them technically, but he reverted to the Cowboys because of the contract that he had there. So
thanks for looking that. I knew there was some questions about. I knew there was a potential question about Don Perkins. I knew that, but I didn't know.
Just some fun trivia, though.
There you go.
You're listening to the Love of the Star podcast, the Love of the Stars and Audacy podcast. You can find it on the Audacy app or wherever you get your podcasts. All right, Brian, it is now time for our Dean Julia Love of the Star mailbag. First question here from @IGotSoul_ with Leighton Vander Esch being cross-trained to rush the passer. Does Dan Quinn plan to use him in a similar role as he did with Anthony Barr last year? From what you've seen so far, how has LVE looked rushing the passer? I don't know about you, Brian. I've thought that, he looks comfortable doing it when he's been asked to. He's a great athlete. He's somebody who's got the size to rush if they wanted him to. And look, the Cowboys have tried to make linebackers into these hybrid rushers before. Barr is one. Jalen Smith is the guy that they tried to do that with on certain situations. I don't know if anything changes for him with the Overshown injury, but just your overall thoughts on LVE rushing.
Yeah, and the fact that Leighton gets to rush probably tells you a little bit more about what they think of Damone Clark, and his ability to be able, or Overshown was going to be that guy to be able to play in the middle, to be able to cover, to be able to play the run. So, yeah, to take Leighton Vander Esch out of that point of attack player and put him as a rusher, I think it's something you're not going to see a whole lot, but it's a change-up. It's a change-up late in the game that maybe a defense hasn't thought about, or an offense hasn't thought about. All of a sudden, wait, what's 55 doing? We've been setting our protection off that 11. Now 11 and 55 are now both rushing. So, maybe it messes you up. I could say I don't see it as being an every game kind of thing, but maybe it's a little bit of a flexibility twist that you got to get somebody home. It's a do or die, third down, get off the field, and all of a sudden you throw Leighton on the edge and you try and confuse what's going on with the scheme or with the blocking. That's what good coaches do. I think the Leighton stuff, I think they wanted to experiment with Leighton just to see if he could do it, and it looks like to me that he is, like you mentioned, he's very comfortable doing it. So I don't anticipate, like I say, I don't anticipate something they're going to do every single time, but it might be that late, something like what Bill Belichick does in New England. Bill Belichick will show you a defense at the very end of the game that you haven't seen the whole day. He will just morph into something that you haven't seen, and then boom, get you off the field and in the game. And I think Dan Quinn's doing the same thing. When
we talk about Leighton Vander Esch rushing, what we are talking about, for those of you that haven't watched practice rivers, we are talking about 2-point stance, like stand-up edge rushing. He is not
off the right edge, yeah.
Yeah, he's because when they use Jalen Smith as a rusher at times during Chris Richard, Mike Nolan, stuff like that, they would actually put his hand in the dirt sometimes and have him rush off the edge. We haven't seen any of that from Leighton Vander Esch. This is more stand-up rushing and blitzing. Just for those of you that are curious, like trying to envision what it looks like, this is not hand in the dirt rushing from Leighton Vander Esch. Next question here from David, and we got this question a lot. People talking about how we had mentioned trading some depth maybe for O-line pieces, and that maybe we look at something like that. So David's wondering specifically which types of players we might be looking to tap into depth to make a trade. Kelvin Joseph, Jordan Lewis, Dante Fowler, Dorrance Armstrong. These are some of the names that he's thrown out. Is there anybody that stands out to you as like a real obvious option for, hey, this might be somebody that you move as part of your depth, somebody that would have some value across the league, somebody that you'd feel comfortable giving up because of your depth and be intriguing to another team?
Do you have anybody in mind? Because I need a minute to think about that.
I think Armstrong or Fowler
was a name.
Make sense. I think they like Fowler too much, and Dan Quinn's got a clear affinity for Dante Fowler from Atlanta, Florida, and here. I don't think he wants to move Fowler. Armstrong makes a lot of sense. If Jordan Lewis were healthy,
that's another one I was going to. Yeah,
if Lewis were healthy, that's a veteran who's smart, who can play inside. He's smaller, but he's played some outside. He can do it. If you really want him to, he can do it. Jordan Lewis would make sense if he were healthy. I don't know how healthy he's going to be.
I wonder if you really were just set on having two, and if you're a pro scout and you're evaluating, depending on what you've seen, okay, you have a college report on Quentin Bohanna, and now you have some NFL tape. His NFL tape hasn't been great, but it was great. You saw some things this summer that kind of gives you a little hope. So if you're not keeping, I know there's been teams that have asked about Neville Gallimore. My gang of 7 guys have asked me about Neville Gallimore and what his story is. But yeah, I think you've hit on that. The one that people have, it's kind of a head scratcher, is would you move for a significant piece? And again, this is just us talking here. It's not something that,
nobody's reporting anything.
Yeah, well, but people are talking about it. Would Michael Gallup, does there value with Michael Gallup, as potentially a guy that you could move in order to get a major piece? I know that there's people, I've heard some whispers about Josh Jones, the tackle from the Arizona Cardinals.
Did you like him coming out of Houston?
I'll tell you what, I didn't think he was bad, but I asked my gang of 7 guys about him just because I haven't watched a lot of Arizona.
Yeah.
I haven't watched, but I like Jones. But my guys told me, he's a better tackle than he is a guard. He's better at left tackle than he is at right tackle. But as a third or fourth to shore up depth, absolutely a guy to trade for. So that's a positive, and that's a team that you're starting to hear that maybe the Arizona Cardinals would move on from a guy like Josh Jones. So keep an eye on stuff like that.
Somebody had asked about, and while we're just sitting here talking about Arizona, there was a trade made today. Isaiah Simmons was traded to the New York Giants, and I know he was brought up by Dean Julia. Traded for a 7th round pick, Brian, the 8th overall pick just a few years ago. He's kind of been positionless, and that was the concern with him, I think, coming out was he just sort of a positionless athlete who wasn't a true football player? So just curious, since his name came up, and we're talking about the Cardinals already and them kind of purging a little bit, what did you think? Obviously, haven't watched a lot of Cardinals tape, I guess. Do you remember what you thought of Simmons coming out? Were you a fan of his?
Yes, but you couldn't figure out where to play him. Was he a safety? Was he a linebacker?
Was he an edge?
Was this an edge? This is what should worry you, though, if you're a Cowboy fan or a fan of Philadelphia or the Commanders or whoever in the division. The fact that Wink Martindale, the coach there at the Giants, is really good at creating blitz packages and things like that.
Yeah.
He will find a role for Isaiah Simmons. And for a 7th round pick, man, that is as no-brainer as it gets.
I mean, if we're talking 7th round picks and you've just lost Overshown, that would have seemed to make some sense, I would think, here in Dallas.
Man,
he could have done the Overshown role.
I wish you'd have called me. I wish you'd have called. And I'm sitting here too. I wonder, and this is another trade possibility. I wonder what San Francisco really wants from Trey Lance for Trey Lance.
I think Tampa makes a lot of sense.
But I just wonder what kind of pick.
Yeah.
I wonder what kind of pick.
3rd overall pick in what, 2020, 21?
Yeah, I know the Cowboys had a second round grade on him. I know because I asked that a long time ago because I was curious. Like, when he got picked, I was like, "Where did you guys have him?" They had him in the top.
Fewer than 500 pass attempts between high school, college, and the pros, which is wild. He went third overall.
But like I was saying, man, if people are willing to give a 7th round pick for a hybrid player, or maybe it's the thing. My fear, is if you're a Cowboy fan, is that Philadelphia kind of working out something with the Colts, for that running back. Maybe that, and there's a you don't have to connect the dots there. That head coach was in Philadelphia. There's a great relationship between Howie and Chris Ballard over there in Philadelphia and Indianapolis. I mean, there's a lot of love between those two organizations, and I worry about Chris just giving up. Okay, fine, I'll take this and move on. So. A lot of, man, you hope you're part of some of these calls. I mean, like I say, for a 7th round pick for Isaiah Simmons, my gosh, I need to ask my gang of 7 about that one for sure.
That does it for us here today on the Love of the Star podcast. We've got a final preseason game with the Raiders, and then after that, it is time to start looking ahead to the New York Football Giants. Isaiah Simmons and the New York Football Giants on September 10th. Brian, I'm already all set to go. Head to New York. John Machota and I from The Athletic, we've already bought tickets for Yankees Brewers. So we're going to hit Yankee Stadium in the morning, and then we're going to go on over to MetLife and take in Cowboys and Giants in one of the furthest press boxes away from the playing field in the NFL there in New York. But real football is almost upon us. For Brian Broaddus, I'm Bobby. What's up, Brian? Give it to me.
I tell you what, man, don't pull the David Hellman and Rowan Cavanagh. They did something like that. They almost didn't make kickoff for a night game.
Nah, we're good. We got these hour and a half long baseball games now with the pitch clock.
Don't think about getting on Ubers. You got to think about trains. There's these Ubers will only take you so far. Rowan and David Hellman, I can't remember what event they went to. They got trapped in the city and just made it barely in time for kickoff for a Giants Cowboys Monday night game. So you be careful. Johnny knows how to travel, but you cats be careful now for sure.
Nah, matches has got me. I'll be fine. All right. Brian Broaddus, I'm Bobby Bell. Thanks so much. We'll talk to you guys later. Hey, thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to give it a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for more content like this. If you want to see more of our videos, be sure to check out our playlist and let us know what you think in the comments below. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media to stay up to date on our latest updates. Links are in the description. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you in the next video.